Welcome all to Hearing the Truth Radio. This is Mike Warren along with our teacher and author D.S. Ferris, and we are dedicated to serving the Lord God by revealing His prophetic message found in the Bible and interpreting them so that everyone in the world may understand. This week's program is called The Two-Horned Beast and New World Order, Part 3, Paganism and Subversive Movements. The last two programs have been great, D.S. Would you just briefly explain the contents of those programs?
Certainly. In the last two programs, we have discovered that the United States is the two-horned beast who causes the world to follow the sea beast, which is the papacy. We have also discovered that the terminology false prophet applies to the religious aspect of the United States. And this is apostate Protestantism. Both the papacy and apostate Protestantism are seeking to change the United States into a government that puts into practice religious and political agendas. This program, along with other programs, will expose more elements of this deceptive agenda.
Up to this point, I noticed that we've now established the Trinity of Evil.
Yes, in a prior program, we analyzed that the dragon of Revelation 12 points to the satanic system of sun worship, the system of 666, which began in ancient Babylon. The dragon represents Satan's system of pagan idolatry in its own form. The beast, as we have studied, is the papacy. The two-horned beast, as is apparent, will become the might and likeness of the papacy. And the two-horned beast is the United States.
Okay, now that we're in the third part of the two-horned beast of the New World Order, what can we expect to see in this program and further programs to come?
We will study the remaining four issues. We will study, number 5, the background of paganism and subversive movements which have laid the foundation for the New World Order through the United States. We will study, number 6, Zionistic elements in the New World Order plan. We will study 7, the mega blueprint for 3 world wars, for the subjugation of the Middle East to the control of the United States and the Vatican. We will study number 8, the negative outcome of the preceding operations in the mark of the beast. We will now begin with the 5th part of this series, how the background of paganism and subversive movements laid the foundation for the New World Order through the United States.
Very good. D.S., before we begin, I must comment, it'll be interesting to find out how the United States will bring into being the New World Order. And also, it'll be interesting to see how paganism and secret societies have laid a foundation for this occurrence.
Yes, this issue is very interesting, Mike. Very interesting. Now, as we already know, the idea of the United States bringing about a new world order is predicated to the fact that the U.S. is the two-horned beast who causes the world to follow the sea beast. But in the study we are going to move in now, we are going to look at the probability of the U.S. being the power to create the new world order from a different angle. And what is that? From the days of the United States inception, the elements of the dragon have been at work to design this country for the purpose of the New World Order.
The elements of the dragon paved the way for the beast. This makes complete sense. And the elements of the dragon paved the way for the two-horned beast. So show us, D.S., some of the elements of the dragon in the two-horned beast.
Let us begin with David Oveson's book, The Secret Architecture of Our Nation's Capital.
Okay, that's an interesting source, D.S., because David Oveson is not writing about conspiracy theories. His research is an unbiased observation of the symbolism and architecture of the capital city.
Oh, I know. Let's raise the question. Does this book show that the dragon has filled Washington? Note this clearly. Oveson's research of the capital city for over a decade has led him to conclude the following. It is a matter of historical fact, as I have said, that there are more than 20 zodiacs in the center of the city. I know of no other city in the world with such a multitude of public zodiacs displayed in so small a space. And that comes from The Secret Architecture of Our Nation's Capital, page 10.
Wow, no other city in the world, other than the capital city, has such a multitude of public zodiacs displayed in so small a place. Haven't we already discovered, DS, that the zodiac was first created by the Babylonians in relation to the sun?
Of course. And Oveson explains that the Capitol building and the city itself were built in relation to the sun. He says, this consideration of the cosmic importance of the sunset to the Capitol building shows that the dome, itself an image of the spiritual world above the city, was to be the spiritual fulcrum of Washington, D.C. And then he says, the Masons lifted the Capitol into the sphere of cosmic stillness, which is the center of all well-planned buildings, and ensured that the Capitol dome was harmoniously related to the zodiacal arch in the skies. And this comes from The Secret Architecture of Our Nation's Capital, pages 83 and 84.
Well, this is pretty significant. Do you realize how significant it is? The sun god and the zodiac fill Washington, D.C. in the capital city architecture. This implies that 666 fills Washington.
Yes.
Haven't we already proved that Papal Rome became the seat of the dragon? It seems the architecture, DS, alludes to the fact that Washington is the next seat of the dragon.
Well, Mike, in The Secret Architecture of Our Nation's Capital, page 8, we are told that prior to the birth of George Washington, Francis Pope, 1663, predicted that the capital of America would be more glorious than that of Rome. In fact, he predicted that the capital would be the new Rome.
The new Rome.
Yep.
No wonder the U.S. is the two-horned beast that causes the world to follow the sea beast. In a sense, the capital city itself, with its architecture, was a prophecy foretelling the union of the papacy in America.
Yes, the pagan symbols and architecture of the capital city are a coded language that describes the purpose of America in its final stages before the second coming of Christ. It has and is foretelling America's purpose as being the two-horned beast who will speak like the dragon. If we believe that Washington, D.C. is the new Rome, then it becomes clear that both the Vatican and the capital city of Washington have become two landmarks for the worldwide spiritual deception that is taking place. Even at the beginning, when the United States was being developed on the foundation of religious and political freedom, the devil was already at work in a plan to thwart the integrity of America.
And that he has done. Now, we must ask, who was responsible for building the capital city in relation to the sun and the zodiac?
The Freemasons built the capital city of the United States. I think we should ask, what is Freemasonry? Nesta H. Webster, an authority on secret societies, gives the following definition. Freemasonry is a dual system, a blend of two distinct traditions. Operative masonry, that is to say the actual art of building, and of speculative theory on the grand truths of life and death. And that comes from Secret Societies and Subversive Movements, page 100. In other words, Freemasonry is the art of empire building on the basis of some spiritual foundation. So, what is the spiritual foundation of Freemasonry? Manly P. Hall gives the following answer. Hermes is of first importance to Masonic scholars because he was the author of the Masonic initiatory rituals, which were borrowed from the mysteries by Hermes. Nearly all of the Masonic symbols are Hermetic in character. And that comes from The Secret Teachings of All Ages, page 37.
Never fails, DS. Hermeticism. If Hermeticism is the foundation of Freemasonry, and the Freemasons built the capital city of Washington on the basis of their philosophy, then the issue is clear. Hermetic architecture is the foundation of Washington. No wonder Oveson found so many zodiacs. No wonder the capital city was built in relation to the sun.
It doesn't take much to put it together. The foundation of Freemasonry is Hermeticism. Therefore, Freemasonry is founded on Babylonian paganism. Let us take note that Nimrod was known as the bridge builder or great tower builder. Nimrod built the Tower of Babel in dedication to the great serpent dragon power with its 7 astrological governors, the sun being the primary representation of the dragon power. Now, Freemasonry as a philosophy is empire building with a spiritual foundation, and that spiritual foundation is Egyptian and Babylonian sun worship.
Well, it's pretty plain to me that when the U.S. was founded, it was founded on most excellent constitution. And for the last 200 years, our nation hasn't been anything like the papacy.
Yes, we have been a free and prosperous nation, unlike papal totalitarianism.
This is exactly why I know that the Hermetic symbols in the capital city were to be a symbol of a future change in character of the United States.
Yes, a change from religious and political freedom to that of totalitarianism. This is what it means when Revelation 13 says the two-horned beast would speak like the dragon. The Hermetic symbolism points to this time frame, which, by the way, we are already in. Now we can begin to clarify this truth by asking some questions. When building the capital city, what did the Freemasons envision for the destiny of America? And who was the source of their vision? These questions can be answered by the Great Seal of the United States. Now, concerning the Great Seal of America, the pyramid with the all-seeing eye above it, we see this on our dollar. Manly P. Hall explains. He says, not only were many of the founders of the United States government Masons, but they received aid from a secret and august body existing in Europe, which helped them to establish this country for a peculiar and particular purpose, known only to the initiated few. The Great Seal is the signature of this exalted body, unseen and for the most part unknown, and the unfinished pyramid upon its reverse side is a trestle board, setting forth symbolically the task to the accomplishment of which the United States government was dedicated from the day of its inception. And that comes from the Secret Teachings of All Ages, page 91.
Okay, DS, I believe the Manly P. Hall emphasized 3 very important propositions, and they are: 1, the Masons who built the capital of America received aid from a secret society in Europe. Number 2, they had a particular purpose in building the nation. Number 3, the Great Seal on the dollar is the signature of the secret society, which, of course, you just got done telling us.
Those are exactly the propositions that are of the utmost importance in our study. At this point, we already possess a basic answer to the second proposition. America was envisioned as the future world power that would permeate with the traditions of Hermeticism, sun worship, and moreover, be an example to the rest of the world to follow in these steps. The way in which we will discover the full meaning of this purpose for America is by first understanding who constituted the source of this vision. Hall asserts that the Masons who built the architecture of the capital city received aid from a secret society in Europe.
Yeah, but who could this society be? I've heard the argument that the Masons were working under the Illuminati.
Yes, the Bavarian Illuminati to be exact. Now let us clarify who these people were. Lady Queenborough tells us, the sect of the Illuminati of Bavaria was founded on May 1st, 1776 by Adam Weishaupt, a professor at the University of Ingolstadt, educated by the Jesuits, and that comes from Occult Theocracy, page 370.
Occult Theocracy. Why am I not surprised to hear that this society has some relation with the Jesuits?
Oh, you need not be surprised, because by the time we are done, you will know that they are very much involved. So going back to the issue, were the Freemasons who built Washington, D.C. working under the Illuminati? Des Griffin argues that Freemasonry and the Illuminati were merged as one power. He says, on July 16, 1782, at the Congress of Wilhelmsbad, an alliance between Illuminism and Freemasonry was finally sealed. This pact joined together all the leading secret societies of the day and united not less than 3 million members all over the world. And that comes from Fourth Reich of the Rich, page 54. If this is true, then the Masonic architects of Washington were working under the direction of the Illuminati. The pyramid with the all-seeing eye, which became the Great Seal of America, has been attributed as one of Freemasonry's most important symbols. Griffin argues, this insignia acquired Masonic significance only after the merger of that order with the Order of the Illuminati at the Congress of Wilhelmsbad in 1782. And that comes from Fourth Reich of the Rich, page 95.
All right, in other words, according to Griffin, the all-seeing eye is not truly a product of Masonry. Rather, it belongs to the Illuminati, and the Freemasons borrowed it as a symbol of their allegiance to the Illuminati.
That's right, Mike. Now going back to what Manly P. Hall said. 1. The Masons who built the capital of America received aid from a secret society in Europe. 2. They had a particular purpose in building the nation. And 3. The Great Seal on the dollar is the signature of this secret society. So, we will truly understand the purpose of the U.S. and last-day events by understanding the Illuminati, because they are the secret society which has left their imprint on the capital city through Freemasonry.
In other words, America was pre-purposed for something, and the Illuminati tells us what that purpose is. Right, DS?
That's right. But you know what is so amazing? Revelation 13 has already told us what will happen. America will unite with the papacy, and both of these powers will unite the world under the dragon. Studies such as we are doing right now, Mike, only give us more details as to what these powers are planning.
Well, more detail is good, and concerning more detail, let's now begin the process of explaining who the Illuminati is.
Queenborough tells us, as the organization of the Illuminati developed, so did its ambitions, which ended in a plot to subvert Freemasonry to its aims of world dominion by any and all means. And that comes from Occult Theocracy, page 372. What does Queenborough mean by the ambitions of the Illuminati ended? Queenborough explains on page 372 that the Jesuits infiltrated the Bavarian sect of Illuminati. This is very interesting, and I will tell you why. Ignatius Loyola's spiritual exercises were synonymous to the Buddhist exercises inherent in the Spanish Illuminati. We know historically that the founder of the Jesuit order, Ignatius Loyola, was brought up on charges by the Inquisition for being an Illuminist. Though he was free from the charge, it is highly unlikely that he wasn't an Illuminist. It is probable that the Jesuit order was very much an Illuministic society. Now, in realizing that the Jesuit oath demands the followers of Ignatius to be all things to all men, is it possible that Adam Weishaupt, who himself was a Jesuit, infiltrated for the Society of Jesus, the Illuminati, and Freemasonry to subjugate them under the control of the Jesuit order? Is that possible?
That sounds about right, DS. But I'm sure that you're aware that the different conspiracy theorists attempt to prove that the Illuminati in the 18th through the 21st century is a distinct movement from the Jesuit order. These guys usually say that the Illuminati are just wealthy men like the Habsburgs, Rothschilds, Rockefellers, and other powerful families.
Sure, I know all about this, and these rich families alone will bring about the New World Order. But let us never forget, the Bible does not teach that a few rich families will bring about the New World Order. The Bible teaches that the beast and the two-horned beast will accomplish this. Therefore, the Illuminati has to be something connected to the papacy and the U.S. on a grander scale. This is not to say that the wealthy families may not be involved with the Illuminist, but these families alone cannot constitute the Illuminati.
To me, it looks more realistic that the Jesuit order constitutes the Illuminati, because as we've seen in several shows, they are the ones that created dispensational futurism. They're the ones that created the Oxford Tractarian movement. They're the ones who have been in the United States working to overthrow democratic liberties, and they're the ones who have always worked for the glory of the papacy.
Exactly. M.F. Cusack was able to see the connection between the Jesuit order and the Illuminati. He says in the following, "It is, however, worthy of note that there is a very curious connection between the directions given by Ignatius Loyola in his famous famous spiritual exercises and the directions which were given to the Buddhist novice on his initiation into the higher mysteries of that creed. And the Alumbrados, or Illuminati, were of distinctly Buddhist origin. Von Hammer, in his History of the Assassins, a branch or development of the Illuminati, points out singular parallels between the teaching of Loyola and the Assassins. Nor can it be said that drawing attention to this parallelism is a mere Protestant prejudice, since the first charge was made by the priests of Alcala, and in the very lifetime of the founder of the Jesuits. The whole subject is one which has hardly met with the consideration which it deserves, and is of grave importance in view of the recently restored power of the Jesuits in nearly every European country. And this comes from the Black Pope, A History of the Jesuits, page 37.
The underlying portion of that last quote is very true. The issue of Jesuit involvement in the Illuminati has not received the consideration it deserves.
That's true. Though Nusta H. Webster does not agree that the Bavarian Illuminati was developed purposely by the Jesuit order, he does acknowledge the following. How did these Oriental methods penetrate to the Bavarian professor? According to certain writers, through the Jesuits. The fact that Weishaupt had been brought up by this order has provided the enemies of the Jesuits with the argument that they were the secret inspirers of the Illuminati. And that comes from Secret Societies and Subversive Movements, page 197. Note this clearly. The position that the Jesuits were the secret inspirers of the Illuminati makes complete sense when one understands that the foundation for the Jesuit order's power was Illuminism. And what is that? Loyola's spiritual exercises. The Jesuits were already a kind of Illuminati society before the Bavarian sect ever came into being.
Right. DS, I think we should spend a considerable amount of time dealing with the Jesuit Illuminati. We need to demonstrate with clarity that when a person hears the word Illuminati, the Jesuit order comes to mind.
I agree. And there are three very important keys for identifying the Illuminati. At this time, we will explain two of them. And they are as follows. Who was the Bavarian Illuminati founded by, and when was it founded? These are the two keys, who and when. We are told the following. From the Jesuit college at Ingolstadt is said to have issued the sect known as the Illuminati of Bavaria, founded by Adam Weishaupt, Jesuit, under the guidance of Nicolay in 1776. And this comes from Lady Queenborough Occult Theocracy, page 313. Note this clearly. The who of the rising of the Bavarian Illuminati is the first key to ascertaining who the authors of this movement are. We know that the Bavarian Illuminati proceeded from a Jesuit college Ingolstadt under the leadership of a Jesuit Weishaupt. The second key to understanding who the authors of the Illuminati are is the when of the rising of this movement. The year 1776 is the year of the founding of this sect.
Why is 1776 so important for establishing that the Jesuit order is the Illuminati?
I will answer that question by means of the following analysis. What motivation would the Jesuits have to create the Bavarian Illuminati? Notice the following statement. On July 21st, 1773, the Pope had abolished the order of Jesuits, but Frederick II of Prussia encouraged and protected them with a view, no doubt, of using their political knowledge and skill against the Bourbons, the Habsburgs, and the Pope. And that comes from Lady Queenborough, Occult Theocracy, page 313.
So that's why the Jesuits poisoned Pope Clement in 1774?
Yes, that's what G.B. Nicolini and the History of the Jesuits tells us.
All right, well, why would the Pope need to abolish the Jesuit order? I thought the Jesuits were the most important allies to the papacy.
I know, that's amazing, isn't it?
Well, I just think it's strange.
I think J. Wayne Lawrence explains this situation the best, where he says, "This society of men, after exerting their tyranny for upwards of 200 years, at length became so formidable to the world, threatening the entire subversion of all social order, that even the Pope, whose devoted subjects they are and must be by the vow of their society, was compelled to dissolve them." And that comes from The Crisis or the Enemies of America Unmasked, page 265.
Wow, that's weird. They were so bad they even wore out their allies.
That's true.
And it's astonishing that the Jesuits became that powerful and so corrupt that even the Pope had to get rid of them. Wow. So going back to where we were, approximately 3 years prior to the founding of the Illuminati in 1773, Pope Clement abolished the order of the Jesuits.
That's right. And is it a coincidence that 3 years after the abolishment of the Jesuit order, the Bavarian sect of Illuminati sprang up from a Jesuit college under the leadership of the Jesuit Weishaupt? Not at all. Why wouldn't the Jesuits rename themselves under another name in 1776? Now, up to this part of our topic, we use two keys for finding out who the true Illuminati is: the who and the when of its inception. Now, we are going to look at the third key that identifies the architects of the Illuminati, and that is the French Revolution. This third key solidifies the first two.
Okay, yes, the French Revolution definitely serves as a good method to demonstrate who the true Illuminati is, because I've personally read the works of different conspiracy theorists who argue that a kind of Illuminati was the power behind the French Revolution. These theorists argue that the Illuminati behind France was something different from the Jesuits.
Oh, you are absolutely right on that point, Mike. A good example of what you are talking about is William Guy Carr, who saw the Illuminati as something different from the Jesuits. Notice what he says about France and the Illuminati. He says, "The men who were to emerge from the Jewish organized underground were formed into Jacobin clubs. Under leaders who were well versed in the duties required of them to direct the reign of terror, they conducted the mass atrocities so they would serve the purpose of their hidden masters and move them further towards their ultimate goal. With the outbreak of the revolution, the Jacobins took over control. They were men who had been handpicked by the Illuminati and Grand Orient Freemasonry." And that comes from Pawns in the Game, page 39.
The Jacobins. William Carr says the Jacobins were used as a tool of the Illuminati to create the French Revolution. Who were these people?
Queenborough defines this group as such. From 1786, there had existed in Paris a propaganda club. The aim of the organization was to further the triumph of dogmatic atheism and create a social upheaval. And that comes from Occult Theocracy, page 379.
So atheism created the social upheaval in the French Revolution. This, of course, means that whoever the Illuminati is most definitely has a connection with atheism.
Atheism was the tool of the Illuminati to create the revolution in France. To rightly identify the Illuminati, let us first identify the ideological cause of the atheism in France. Sutton tells us, before Adam Weishaupt formed his order of Illuminati in 1776, free-thinking or the encyclopedists were already preaching a philosophy against the tyranny and fanaticism of the Roman Catholic Church. One such voice heard in the third quarter of the 18th century was a French author, philosopher, and apostle of free thought named Voltaire, and that comes from Illuminati 666, page 180. Note this clearly. Voices such as Voltaire and the Encyclopedia were behind the atheism in France. But who were the encyclopedists? In the years 1751 through 1772, philosophers who were deistic in belief wrote the French Encyclopedia. The encyclopedists emphasized philosophy and science as the true developer and savior of the human race. They taught that science would save man from the incongruities and myths of religion.
That's ridiculous. I remember in history that the encyclopedia gave the French the weapon to destroy religion, and men like Voltaire promoted such hate of the Catholic Church and religion.
Mike, do you think it possible that the Jesuits inspired the encyclopedia? For starters, do you know what the Jesuits did when they were abolished by the Pope in 1773? Niccolini tells us their activity, where he says, "They, the Jesuits, declared war against Rome, against religion, and surpassed even the school of Voltaire in audacity, and mocking and insulting a virtuous Pope. Although overwhelmed on every side, they were not daunted, and their courage was still greater than their misfortunes. Driven from those countries in which they had been nurtured and cherished, and which ought to have been their natural abode, they turned their regards to the camp of their enemies." And that comes from the History of the Jesuits, pages 422 and 423. That the Jesuits declared war on the papacy and religion and became like Voltaire is very correct. That the Jesuits went to their enemies for support is also a correct statement. What we should take note of immediately is that the war of the Jesuits against Rome and against religion was manifested by the Illuminati in the form of atheism. What does that tell us? That tells us that the Jesuit order is the Illuminati.
Yes, that last quote says a lot. I may not have known exactly who the Jacobins were, but I know Voltaire was definitely one of those creators of atheism. If the Jesuits surpassed his school, and we know that they are clearly candidates for causing the problems in the French Revolution.
You want to hear something amazing? The Jesuits trained Voltaire. Will Durant says that the Jesuits educated Voltaire, and as a result, Voltaire had an enduring respect for them. Durant says they, the Jesuits, endured him, Voltaire, with their customary patience, and he reciprocated by retaining through all his heresies, meaning deism, a warm respect and gratitude for the Jesuits who had disciplined his intellect to clarity and order. And that comes from the Age of Voltaire, page 4. Durant then cites Voltaire at 52 years of age, saying the following: I was educated for 7 years by men who took unrewarded pains to form the minds and morals of youth. They inspired me in my taste for literature and sentiments which will be a consolation to me to the end of my life. What did I see during the 7 years that I was with the Jesuits? The most industrious, frugal, regulated life, all their houses divided between the care they took of us and the exercises of their austere profession. I call to witness the thousands educated by them, as I was. There is not one who would belie my words. That's the Age of Voltaire, page 4.
D.S., if the Jesuits could train Voltaire, then surely they must have already had atheistic ideas long before the conflict in France.
Oh, but sure they did. The Abate Leon illustrates the secret doctrine of the Jesuits a century before Voltaire, where he says, I will demonstrate that Voltaireanism prevailed in Italy during a whole century before Voltaire, that those who attacked mysteries and dogmas with language and sarcasms like his were not libertines repudiated and condemned by the religious authority, or a handful of savants whose incredulity was confined to the circle of the cultivated class, but that the attack on the foundation of religion and morality was made in the very churches from the pulpit and by numerous preachers, that the numbers who flocked to hear them were immense, and that they enjoyed the countenance of the bishops and prelates. This horrible disorder was practiced in the most celebrated churches of Rome. It resisted the few feeble efforts made to put it down, and was still in existence when Voltaire appeared. Amazing, isn't it? The sacred buildings rang with loud shouts of laughter and approval of the most shameless commentaries. The acts of the patriarchs were held up to ridicule. The Song of Songs afforded an ample theme for obscene jesting. The visions of the prophets were turned into derision, and themselves treated as addle-headed delirious. The apostles were not spared, and it was taught that everything concerning them was mere fable. Finally, Christ himself was outraged, worse than he had ever been, by his most rancorous enemies, and was accused of criminal intercourse with the Magdalene, the woman taken in adultery, and the woman of Samaria. Thus was absolute irreligion preached, and for so long a time did this poison flow from the pulpits. The Bible was scoffed at, and Christianity likened to a mythology, and that comes from the Jesuit Conspiracy, the Secret Plan of the Order, pages 260 and 261. According to the Abate Leon, this was going on a century before Voltaire, and this was inculcated by the Jesuits.
If the Jesuits were influencing the Catholic Church with atheism a century before the French Revolution, then there's no doubt where Voltaire received his understanding of things. The encyclopedia also was influenced by the Jesuits.
The men who wrote the encyclopedia received their atheistic ideas from the Jesuits. We agree with the Abate Leon where he says, a third of a century before the French Revolution, a vast change was taking place, as in our day in the minds of men. Everything was preparing for a decisive crisis. Then, as now, the Jesuits and their system of teaching represented represented the most obstinate immobility and the most retrograde doctrines. Men crave for more air, light, and life, and the Jesuits and their adherents everywhere strove to stifle these aspirations. And that comes from the Jesuit Conspiracy, The Secret Plan of the Order, page 249. Now, in looking at all of the things that we have analyzed up to this point, no wonder Edwin A. Sherman argued the following: "But if the Jesuits are to be the directors of learning, must we despair of the future generation which issues from their hands? No, because the Jesuits educated Voltaire and Diderot, their greatest enemies, and further the disciples of the Jesuits with their writings precipitated the revolution of 1798. The education by the Jesuits created philosophers, casuists, and certainly, as it's shown, atheists overall." And that comes from the Engineer Corpse of Hell, page 29.
Yes, when Sherman says the Jesuits caused the revolution in 1798, is he talking about the fall of the papacy in 1798?
Yes, when the Jesuit order was abolished in 1773, their goal was to make the papacy pay dearly. The Jesuits subversively used the French to take revenge on the papacy and religion. They used the atheistic schools of Voltaire to foment a revolution that would abolish the papacy and religion. This was the Jesuits' revenge.
The Jesuits inspired the encyclopedia. They inspired Voltaire and his contemporaries. They created the Illuminati in 1776. They caused the French Revolution, and they caused the fall of the papacy. But the deadly wound was healed, as we all know.
Well said, Mike. Mike, up to this point, we can make the following connections. Number one, the encyclopedia was the source of doctrine that caused the French Revolution. Number two, the revolution made war on the Bible, religion, and eventually on the papacy. Number three, the Illuminati has been identified as the power that caused the French Revolution. Now, let me demonstrate a parallel set of propositions. Number one, the Jesuits trained the men who wrote the encyclopedia. Number two, the Jesuit order was abolished by Clement the 14th in 1773. Number three, the Jesuits commenced to make war on the church and religion. Number four, in 1776, the Bavarian Illuminati came out of a Jesuit college under the leadership of a Jesuit. How much clearer can you get? Who is the Illuminati? The Jesuit order is.
Even though you've made good enough connections to prove the point, we might as well go through some more.
Sounds good to me. In addition to the previous information, we find further correlations to prove that the Illuminati is the Jesuit order. Here are some examples. Nesta H. Webster says, "The encyclopedia was therefore essentially a Masonic publication," and that comes from Secret Societies and Subversive Movements, page 162. He then asserts the following: "The Masonic authorship of the encyclopedia and the consequent dissemination of revolutionary doctrines has remained no matter of doubt to the Freemasons of France. On the contrary, they glory in the fact," and that comes from the same source, page 162. Note with clarity that Webster says the encyclopedia was behind the revolutionary activities in France, and the encyclopedia is Masonic. This correlation binds Freemasonry with the Jesuits, for the Jesuits were the instructors of the encyclopedia. Now, what do these correlations have to do with Illuminism? Notice what Des Griffin says. He says, on July 16, 1782, at the Congress of Wilhelmsbad, an alliance between Illuminism and Freemasonry was finally sealed. This pact joined together all the leading secret societies of the day and united not less than 3 million members all over the world. And that comes from Fourth Reich of the Rich, page 54.
So, yes, let me get all this straight. The Illuminati merged with Freemasonry. The encyclopedia is Masonic. The encyclopedia caused the French Revolution. What does this translate to? All of this translates to the following. The Freemasonic encyclopedia of the Illuminati caused the French Revolution.
Yes, and who trained the men who wrote the encyclopedia?
The Jesuits did.
Who formed the Illuminati in 1776?
The Illuminati was formed at a Jesuit college by a Jesuit.
Now, a moment ago, we made the following deductions. 1. The Illuminati merged with Freemasonry. 2. The encyclopedia is Masonic. And 3. The encyclopedia calls the French Revolution. Then we ask the question, what does this translate to? We answered in the following. The Freemasonic Encyclopedia of the Illuminati calls the French Revolution. Based on all the information we have explored today, the above deductions rather translate into the following. The Freemasonic Encyclopedia of the Jesuit Order calls the French Revolution. Notice what Niccolini attributes to the Jesuits. He says in the following. Already after their, meaning the Jesuits' suppression, and during the ascendant march of the French Revolution, they, with infinite address, had persuaded the different sovereigns, either menaced on their thrones or already hurled from them, that their overthrow, the crimes which, it is unfortunately true, in a moment of delirium, had been committed in the name of liberty, the impious and subversive doctrines which had invaded Europe and extinguished every sense of morality and religion, all were to be attributed to the suppression of the order. And that comes from History of the Jesuits, Their Origin, Progress, Doctrines, and Designs, pages 436 and 437.
According to the last quote, the French Revolution and the subversive doctrines are to be attributed to the suppression of the Jesuit order.
Absolutely right.
So in other words, the Freemasonic doctrines of the encyclopedia are to be attributed to the Jesuit order. How much clearer can things get?
Let's continue. In addition to the previous information, we still yet have further correlations to prove that the Illuminati is the Jesuit order. Webster gives us further clarification as to who was involved in the subversive movements in France. He says, Frederick the Great, the Freemasons, the Encyclopedists, and the Orleanists were working on the material plane to undermine the church and monarchy of France. And that comes from Secret Societies and Subversive Movements, page 165. Now, concerning Frederick of Germany, we are told the following. The prospect of the encyclopedia contained therein, meaning France, may well have appeared to him, meaning Frederick, a magnificent method for obtaining a footing in the intellectual circles of France. By 1786, French Masonry was thus entirely Prussianized, and Frederick had indeed become the idol of Masonry everywhere. And that comes from the same source just cited, pages 163 and 160.
So, let me get this clear in my thoughts. It's apparent, according to Webster, that French Freemasonry was the power that caused the French Revolution. I see the emphasis that by 1786, French Freemasonry had become Prussianized through Frederick the Great. Is this significant at all?
That is very, very significant. Why? Because when the Jesuit order was abolished in 1773, the Jesuits found refuge in Prussia under Frederick. Concerning the Jesuits, Niccolini says, those fiery persecutors of all religious sects had recourse for protection to the Lutheran Frederick of Prussia and to the schismatic Catherine of Russia, and that comes from History of the Jesuits, page 423. According to Niccolini in his work History of the Jesuits, pages 424 through 430, Frederick protected the Jesuits from the European nations who were seeking to destroy them, and Frederick received much influence from the Jesuits.
All right, let me get this straight. French Freemasonry was the power behind the French Revolution.
Yes.
By 1786, French Freemasonry had become Prussianized by Frederick the Great.
Yep. And
after 1773, the Jesuits found refuge with Frederick the Great. DS, this is clear.
Of course it is. After 1773, the Jesuits found refuge with Frederick, and they influenced him. If French Freemasonry had become Prussianized by Frederick, and if this Freemasonry was behind the French Revolution, then it is reasonable to conclude, based on all this information, that French Freemasonry had become Prussianized by the Jesuits, and this Jesuit Freemasonry was behind the revolution.
Yes, that makes total sense. Total sense.
The Jesuits were indeed the power behind Frederick. Webster, as was previously demonstrated, argues that Frederick used the Masonic Encyclopedia of France to foment his own ambitions. We must ask, were these ambitions only Frederick's ambitions? Not at all. Niccolini emphasizes, the encyclopedists, after the destruction of the society, meaning the Jesuit order, had caused the revolution and set the whole of Europe in a blazing conflagration. And that comes from History of the Jesuits, page 437.
That's clear right there. After the destruction of the Jesuit order, the encyclopedists caused the revolution. We're seeing a basic illustration of cause to effect. Jesuits have no problems. Encyclopedists are good. Pope abolishes Jesuits. Encyclopedists cause revolution.
That's exactly the case. Niccolini, after emphasizing that the encyclopedists caused the revolution, he makes an interesting argument about the Jesuits, quoting a certain author. We read in the following. He grants that the encyclopedists did make the revolution, but, says he, the society, meaning the Jesuits, by altering and disfiguring, in the opinion of many, the Catholic faith, the morality of the gospel, the authority of the princes, and all those fundamental laws which form the basis of all states and governments, in fact, by substituting for religion their own sect, had shaken all principles of morality, religion, and good government, and had indeed brought the encyclopedists into existence, the most conspicuous of whom, in fact, as Voltaire, Diderot, Helvidius, and many others, had issued from Jesuitical colleges or had Jesuits as their tutors. And that comes from History of the Jesuits, page 437. Note this clearly. These historical correlations are not difficult to understand. The Jesuits not only educated the men who created the Masonic Encyclopedia, but the Jesuits have been charged with creating the ideas of the encyclopedia a century before Voltaire. After the Jesuit order was abolished by Clement XIV, the Jesuits made war on the papacy and religion as a whole. The Jesuits went to previous students, such as Voltaire, to take revenge on the papacy. The Jesuits also found refuge in Prussia under the protection of Frederick. Frederick used the encyclopedia to foment his ambitions to undermine the papacy in France. In essence, the Jesuits are inextricably tied to these secret societies, for the Jesuits have become the architects of the modern versions of them. Who is the modern-day Illuminati? That's not hard to figure out. When you put the pieces together, it's the Jesuit order.
Now, DS, once again, I'd like to stop right here and summarize the things that we've spoken about today. This will allow us to put things in perspective again.
Okay. We began today's program with the prospect of studying the background of paganism and subversive movements, which have laid the foundation for the New World Order through the United States. At the beginning of today's program, we brought into focus a very important issue, that the U.S. contains elements of the system of the dragon. We demonstrated that the capital city of Washington contains more than 20 zodiacs. Symbols of sun worship, along with other pagan symbols, are in the architecture of the U.S. capital city. We looked at three very important propositions that Manly P. Hall made. 1. The Masons who built the capital of America received aid from a secret society in Europe. 2. They had a particular purpose in building the nation. And 3. The Great Seal on the dollar is the signature of this secret society. We focused in on Manly P. Hall's second and third proposition, that the Masons who built the capital city did it in such a way as to give us a clue as to the purpose of the United States, that America would be the nation to place the all-seeing eye on the pyramid, that America would be the power to establish a new world order.
Those symbols, of course, correlate with Revelation 13. The second beast would cause the whole world to follow the sea beast. Today, the U.S. has a working relation with the Vatican, and we're going to see the complete fulfillment of the prophecy.
That's right, Mike.
Now, DS, please continue.
What is extremely fascinating is that, according to Hall, those who built the architecture were influenced by a secret society in Europe. That secret society, according to different theorists, is the Illuminati. And what did we find out today? The Illuminati was created by the Jesuit order.
Okay, what do you think our next study will be like?
As we mentioned earlier, our goal is to study the following. 5. the background of paganism and subversive movements which have laid the foundation for the New World Order through the United States. 6. Zionistic elements in the New World Order plan. 7. The mega blueprint for 3 world wars for the subjugation of the Middle East to the control of the United States and the Vatican. And 8. The negative outcomes of the preceding operations in the Mark of the Beast. Today, we have begun the 5th issue, which is the background of paganism and subversive movements which have laid the foundation for the New World Order through the United States. Today we have begun that issue. On the next program, we are going to continue with the 5th issue. On the next program, we are going to cover more detail about the architecture of the capital city.
Well, that should be remarkable.
Yes, it will. Today we only got started on the matter. Then we moved into the issue of who constitutes the true Illuminati. Next program, we will finish where we have left off today and move into the issue of the capital city with more concentration.
DS, I've learned quite a lot from today's program, and I know the listeners have as well. Once again, thanks for teaching here on Hearing the Truth Radio.
Well, like usual, it is a pleasure to teach, examine, and study with you, Mike. I look forward to the next program where we can continue with these very important issues.
And that they are. The next program is coming shortly, so check back with us from time to time. And there's a few places on the internet that you can hear this program. If you want to read Mr. Ferris's book, Prophetic Tool Chest for Dismantling the Dispensational Delusion, you can listen to Hearing the Truth and read at the same time at www.prophetictoolchest.bravehost.com. You'll need Internet Explorer and Windows Media Player. You'll need to play the show through Windows Media Player. Otherwise, you'll have to wait about 15 minutes or so for it to download. From there, you can jump into our audio library and find past programs like Futurism, The Counter-Reformation, The Little Horn of Daniel 7 and 8, The Second Coming of Christ, The Seal of God, and The Mark of the Beast, and a list of other past shows. www.thelordtalks.r8.org is another great place to read and listen to the newest program. Once again, if you want to avoid long downloading time, run the program through Windows Media Player. Or if you just want to listen to the newest show without downloading at all, you can visit the official website of Hearing the Truth Radio Ministries at www.hearingthetruth.bravehost.com. The new show starts automatically there. Questions or comments about Hearing the Truth can be sent via email to hearingthetruth@yahoo.com.